Hello, and welcome to Week 1, Unit 3 of the Application Development for SAP Business by Design course. In this unit, we'll be looking at user setup and first glance at the actual studio. We'll go ahead and create a user for ourselves, assign the proper rights, and then I'll be able to log in and we'll take a look at what some of the main views of the studio are. First off, before we go creating a user, let's talk about roles. The typical user roles in relation to SAP Business by Design and specifically the SAP Cloud Application Studio fall into one of three roles themselves. First is developer role. As a developer, you're usually somebody who's creating and maintaining all the typical content and development objects within the Cloud Studio itself. So that means you're creating new business objects, user interfaces, forms, web services, whatever it might be. They're really somebody who's doing the bulk of the work within the SAP Cloud Application Studio. Second, there's the Studio Administrator. The administrator is someone who will usually create new solutions, delete solutions, can maintain the life cycle, so deploying them to another tenant. They also have the ability to maintain session logs. So as a developer develops on specific content, it'll be checked out for that developer, so an exclusive lock, and administrators can manage those locks. The third one is someone who's not actually going to be in the studio itself. It's a business user. If you've been using SAP Business by Design, this is the type of user you've been using. A business user is somebody who does not have access to the SAP Cloud Application Studio. They are usually just using the front end, using the transactional UIs, looking at reports, forms, etc. So we will use all three of these roles throughout the class. The first two, developer and administrator, oftentimes, this is the same person. So you might have it where many people are both an admin and a developer, or you may choose to keep the administrative access only to a select few. That's a choice that you have to make for you, your team, and your company. We will use users that are both admins and developers, and then we will also use a separate business user. And the reason we're going to do that is we're going to use our business users for our testing, and the developer users specifically for development. We won't mix the two between. So we're going to keep a clear separation of the two because I never want to assign the Partner Development Work Center to a specific business user. It'll be specifically separate. Now, how do we actually create a user for the studio? Well, there's a few things we'll need to do. First, we're going to go ahead and create a service agent. You could find this under Business Partner Data or a couple other work centers that are available in SAP Business by Design. And once we generate a new service agent, we'll want to click the Request User action now from there. That'll then provide a new entry you'll see under the Business Users Work Center view under the Application and User Management Work Center. With this business user, we can now set their ID, set an initial password, and then assign the proper access rights. The specific work centers we'll need for someone who wants to use the SAP Cloud Application Studio are everything under the Business Analytics Work Center view, or Work Center. They'll need a list of views from Application and User Management, which we'll see in a little bit. And then they're also going to need one or more views from Partner Development Work Center. Now, the Partner Development Work Center and its views are what really give access to the studio. That's what really defines if a user is a studio user or not, a developer or an administrator. This is the work center that we should never assign to our business users within the system. We want to keep a clear separation, remember? Let's go ahead and try some of this out. Now, I have a tenant here. I'm going to log in as administration01, password welcome1. Let me try my password again. There we go. For all of our typical test tenants that we have, this is a usual admin user. Now you would want to log in as whatever admin you have in your tenant. And I'm going to go specifically down to the Business Partner Data Work Center and open the Service Agents view. Now, if you have a tenant like we do here, one of our test tenants, there's already a PDI user, but let's say you don't have that. You won't have this in your tenants, obviously. I'm going to go ahead and say New Service Agent. And I'm just going to give a few details for now. Let's go ahead and provide a name. I would also want to define a service agent ID if one's not automatically generated for me. So let's say 8001. Name I'll say is Nick Rose. And then let's go ahead and hit save. Now after this saves, I'm going to go ahead and request a user. And that's really what's going to give me the actual business user, the user that I'll want to log in with. Now this user, as I mentioned, we're going to use just for development. We won't use this for testing. Technically, you could log into the front end with this user. There's no restriction behind that, but it's just good to keep a clear separation. Let's go ahead and go up to Application User Management and Business Users. And I'm going to search for Rose. And I should see an entry here. And yes, Rose Nick. So the last name, first name, and the service agent ID. Let's go ahead and edit the attributes. And I'm going to give myself a new ID, something I can remember a little bit easier. I'm going to say nrose. I'm also going to set an initial password for myself and click save. Then I'm going to edit the access rights. Now, once I'm in here, like I said, I need a specific set of views to be able to get in there into the studio. I'm going to take everything from Business Analytics. I will also take, for now, everything from Partner Development. And this is what I mentioned has the administration and development views. Then I'll need some specific things from Application and User Management. Now, just for ease here, I'm actually going to copy the existing user that's there. So let's search for PDI. This will save us a little bit of time. And if I open up Application and User Management, you can see now I have access to the flexibility changelog. This is what authorizes a key user, and we'll be reusing some of the key user tools, so we want access to this. Form template maintenance, so we can use forms. There's also the incidents work center view, the mashup related views, so mashup authoring, mashup web services, and mashup template maintenance. You can see I have Microsoft Office template maintenance, and that will round it out for us. Now all of these are mentioned in the help content, which we'll see in the next unit. So once I've maintained the correct authorizations, I could provide access to other work center views if I wanted to. For now, we're going to keep it at this. And I'm going to save and close and log out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to log back in now with this user. That way I can set my own password and get rid of the initial password that's there. So nrose, let me set my initial password and then log in. And now I should be able to create a new password for myself. Let's type that correctly. Okay, perfect. So now my password has changed. And as I log in, you can see I just have those specific views that we created, just a couple views, not much. But I'm also now going to go ahead and log into the studio. So first off, like I said, you want to make sure you have a system maintained. We should have already maintained ours in Unit 2. And now I can just log in with that name. So nrose, let me enter my password. If you get some errors when you log in, typically it could be one of a couple things. You may not have the right access, so something from the Partner Development Work Center. You may have the wrong password, of course. You also may have either the wrong URL for your system and also your proxy. So you want to make sure you check some of those things if you're getting errors when you log in. Usually it's going to be one of those four. Now, this is what the studio itself looks like as it's logging in. You can see on the left side I have a My Solutions panel. The My Solutions panel is what shows all the solutions that are there in that specific tenant. And this really means all solutions. So if I create a solution with my user, anybody else who logs into this tenant would also be able to see that solution and be able to develop in that solution. There's nothing there's no content in the studio that is user specific. Also, then we have our kind of development pane here. You'll see once we create some content, any new business objects, scripts, details about a web service, all of this would show up in this pane. Down here I have an error list, so this shows me the errors that are there that I might have, or warnings. It'll tell me what the file is, the line number, and I actually have a little red squiggly line you'll see in a little bit. The right is the Solution Explorer. This shows all the content of a specific solution that we have in the studio. Also, down here is the Properties view. This will show us the properties of any selected content we have. And then the toolbar. And we'll use a few things from the toolbar when it comes to debugging and lifecycle management. There's also some other details here for views. One view that we'll look at extensively is the Repository Explorer. This shows us information about standard content that's available to us as a developer in the studio. So what are the business objects that are there? What does the business object look like? How is it compiled? The use UIs that we can use in our UIs. Also things for dump analysis, for example. So if I'm having dumps that are going on based on my code, it can show me more info about those. And some other views that you'll see as we go through the studio. I also want to point out the administration here. You can see some other things for log on, log off, creating solutions. We'll look at more of this as we go on as well. And finally, the help. The help here is located within the studio, and we will talk about help in the next unit about what the different options are to us. I've also provided in the slides here kind of a brief overview of these different sections. So you can see the solutions window, the code editor, error list, things like that. Also a list of some of the other views that we talked about. So that way you have a reference to go back and see what are some of the main views that we use. There's also lots of other places, but this is just some of the more common things that you'll use in the studio. And that wraps it up for week 3. So we were able to create a user. We talked about what that user needs, so the specific work centers to be a studio user. Also the different roles, right? A developer, an administrator, and then separately a business user who is not a studio user. And then we were able to kind of go in and take a first look at the studio. So we're going to do a lot more at the studio, obviously, when it comes into the next views. In the next unit, though, we're going to go ahead and talk about help content. Thank you very much.